Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The nonstop stream of climate nonsense from the press is getting very difficult to keep up with. The only way I have a chance to stay on top of it is to make very short videos like this one. 7 years ago, California Governor Jerry Brown predicted that the Los Angeles airport would be submerged by rising sea level. California will face billions of dollars in spending to cope with the consequences of rising sea levels if low-lying communities along the coast are ultimately submerged as scientists predict, Governor Jerry Brown said Tuesday. Brown's remarks came a day after the release of 2 studies finding that a slow-motion and irreversible collapse of a massive cluster of glaciers in Antarctica has begun and could cause sea levels to rise worldwide by 4 feet within 200 years. If that happens, the Los Angeles airport is going to be underwater, Brown told reporters. That sounds pretty scary. Let's take a look at the Los Angeles airport on Google Earth. The Los Angeles airport is actually more than 100 feet above sea level. But Governor Brown said that a 4-foot rise in sea level over the next 200 years would drown the airport. If that did happen, then the airport would only be 107 feet above sea level instead of 111 feet. Now let's look at NOAA's tide gauge data from Los Angeles. For the past century, sea level has been rising at an average rate of about 1 millimeter per year. According to Google Earth, the airport is about 30 meters or 30,000 millimeters above sea level. So if the trend over the last 100 years continued, it would take about 30,000 years for the airport to drown. But over the past 40 years, there's actually been little or no change in sea level at Los Angeles. So the Los Angeles airport is probably safe for another 100,000 years or so. Governor Brown isn't too good at math, but he came up with a solution to save the airport from drowning in 100,000 years. He decided to spend $100 billion on a bullet train to nowhere based on the thinking that it would stop climate change. Jerry Brown isn't too bright, and neither are the voters in California who elected him governor decade after decade. In 1977, Governor Brown warned of a drought disaster. He said California was facing a disaster of immeasurable magnitude. But that drought wasn't caused by global warming, it was caused by global cooling. New York Times, January 5, 1978. International team of specialists finds no end in sight to 30-year cooling trend in the Northern Hemisphere. So in 1977, California was facing a global cooling drought disaster, and sea level was rising a little bit faster back then too. So it isn't completely clear what Jerry Brown was hoping to accomplish with his $100 billion train to nowhere. Also in 1977, the National Science Foundation warned about the possible collapse of the West Antarctic ice sheet. But they said it has nothing to do with a warmer climate, just the dynamics of unstable ice. And remember that Earth had been cooling for the prior 30 years. It's also known that glaciers in Antarctica have been retreating rapidly for centuries. In 1932, it was reported that the Ross Ice Shelf had retreated 30 miles since it was first seen and surveyed. It appears to be continuing its century-long process of shrinking, and that process may have been going on for centuries. The LA airport is not going to drown. Spending $100 billion on a bullet train to nowhere isn't going to make any difference. Retreat of glaciers in Antarctica has been going on for centuries and has nothing to do with global warming or man-made climate change. But the real problem isn't clowns like Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom. The problem is the voters who keep electing these people over and over again. California is a mess, and they're getting exactly what they deserve for the way they vote. People move to California to get out of the rain, and then when it doesn't rain in California, they blame it on climate change. A few months after Governor Brown made these predictions of drought disaster in 1977, California was flooded. I remember going to visit a friend in Southern California during the winter of 1977-1978, and it didn't stop raining the whole time I was there. Drought is actually the normal climate for California. In the past, they've had droughts which lasted more than 1 century. The 20th century was actually the wettest century of the last 1,200 years in California. Even the Los Angeles Times used to be aware of the reality of California's climate. But when they do get a drought now, they blame it on global warming and man-made climate change. Toto, Curia, and Caesar are happy to educate California voters. You can visit them on the web at realclimatescience.com.